Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. And welcome to today's session. My name is Shivabrata Nayak, and I'm going to deliver this particular session in a broadly manner. Well, what this particular session is indicating here. uh, in this particular session, we are going to discuss ability enhancement course, and this ability enhancement course, which is a compulsory one for the arts and science students. Um, and this comes in a plus three second semester students. And in this particular session, we are going to discuss their first unit of communication. Mm, well, when we talk about the communication, means what it is, what are the importance, and what are the factors, means and means how we can enhance our communication skills. We will discuss in a broadly manner. Well, without wasting of time, let's proceed for the discussion. Well, the first thing is called as a communication. I hope you all have a clear idea about what communication is all about, as I took this particular text, or I discussed a particular um, topic in your class in a broadly manner. But for your benefit, for your means, for your understanding or better understanding, means I make this video, and I hope this particular video will help you a lot for your internal exam as well as for the semester exam. Let's go for it. So the first thing is called as a communication. Now, what communication is all about? If I talk about communication, so communication is nothing but called as um, it is the means of exchanging information. Not only it means it is the means of exchanging information, it is also known as the ideas or feelings between people, isn't it? That's what is called as a communication. So what communication is all about? Communication means exchanging information, ideas, or feelings between people, right? It can be done by speaking, it can be done by writing, gestures, or even body language, right? So, in that case, if I talk about the example of communication, so I can say that means I'm a teacher, I explain a lesson to students, or means as a friend, I also means chat with some of my other friends, will be nothing but an example of communication. Hope you understood this. Now, let's move to the next one. So that could be called as an example of communication, and the definition of communication. Now, you can look into this particular picture. In this particular picture, it is clearly stated about the definition of communication. So what does it say? Communication is the process of what? Sending and receiving messages through verbal or non-verbal means. Now, here you would find out it is directly making a classification that verbal or non-verbal means. So these are the two ways through which we actually make a communication. Like, let's say that means you both, or you and your friend both are in a particular restaurant, and you make a kind of a chatting, right? So in that case, one is saying that your food smells delicious, right? And in that you reply that thanks. So in that case, what do we find out here? Means the the kind of a statement which have been spoken here is called as your food smells delicious is the message, right? But who made this? It is nothing but the sender, right? So, and if you look at the next one, means thanks is nothing but called as a feedback here, right? So she wants to try a bite. So that's what the kind of interpretation means that one draws, isn't it? And that's why we call it, means the person who draws that she wants to try a bite, So it indicates nothing but the person is a receiver. So here, the communication is made between whom? The sender and the receiver. And what they, you can say that what they means send and what they receive is nothing but known as the message, right? So in that case, you also find out means there is a message and there is a feedback, right? So one sends the message and the other means interprets it and then after gives the feedback. So that's what is nothing but called as a the kind of a definition and the example you can take it. Right. Now, let's move to the next one. The next one is stated importance of communication. So when I said that importance of communication, so what are the benefits that we draw when we make a communication? So, and why do we make the communication? So, if you say that we make the communication for various reasons. So, one of the reason is called as a we try to build relationship, isn't it? We try to build relationship. It means called as a, when you help people connect and understand, isn't it? That's again called as a building relationship. So for that, communication is necessary. Second is called as a, we also means do nothing but called as a shared knowledge. That's called as a transfer knowledge. So when we say that transfer knowledge, it means we essentially consider that education, business, and in daily life. So whatever the kind of knowledge we transfer to others is known as a mode of communication, isn't it? Similar to that, you can also talk about beside building relationship, transfer knowledge, you can go for the solving problems or solves problems, isn't it? Like when you make a communication, so clear communication can stop confusion. Right. So clear communication can means stop confusion, problems, and also resolve all kind of queries. Right. That's also nothing but called as the importance of communication. Importance of communication can also helps you to make the decision making. Decision making decision making. Like, let's say that leaders need what? Effective communication. Leaders need effective communication. Why? Not to guide the teams, right, who are working under them. So in that case, means how do they make the decision and how their decisions impact to the team. So that happens through the communication. Even means beside decision making, we can go for the what reduces conflicts. So if you observe that what any kind of a misunderstanding, so or called as a means a misinterpretation, so that can be avoided when we make the communication and that communication is clear. So in that case, we can say means, or what we can say here, we can say that in importance of communication, we can say that we build relationship, we transfer knowledge, we solve problems, we make the decisions, and we also reduces conflicts, isn't it? So let's talk about that. There is an example. If we take the example like in an office you are working, and if a manager gives clear instruction or clear instructions to whom? Clear instructions to the lower staff members or called as employees, right? Then you know exactly what to do, right, as an employee. So in that case, means if the HR is or if the means a manager is giving clear instruction or clear information, so the lower employees or called as the lower staff members, so they can do what exactly they're supposed to do, isn't it? That's what is the nothing but called the importance of communication. So in this particular example, we can find out that the relationship between the manager with the employees, or you can say that the company founder or the company chairman with its workers, right? that can be called as a kind of a relationship they can form through the mode of communication. Second is called as a teacher who is sharing the knowledge, that can be called as a transfer knowledge. Even means the chairman, if unable, a chairman or called as a founder or the manager of the company, means make a business, and in that business means if he finds out some kind of a problems, some kind of a difficulties or some kind of a challenges, and that can be eradicated while doing nothing but a communication with the other employees, isn't it? So the problem can be solved through the mode of clear communication that can stop confusion, that can stop any kind of a chaos. So uh, similar to that, we also talk about the decision making. So um, as an employee or as a manager of a company or as a leader of a particular organization, your decision matters the most, right? How do you make the decision, and how effective your means communication, and through that effective communication, how you make your team's guide. That's what is called as a communication teaches, or that's what is nothing but importance of communication. Even means communication can eradicate any kind of a enmity, right? That happens between two groups or two people, right? It can also eradicate misinterpretation, misunderstanding, isn't it? So in that case, we can point out building relationship, transfer knowledge, solving problems, and decision making, and reduces conflicts can be known as the um, men's importance of communication. I hope you understood this. Well, let me take you to the next one. Yes. Yeah. You can see that here I have pointed all these five uh, points which are indicating as the importance of communication skills. Now, let's move to the next one. Yeah. Okay. So what are the factors that actually influencing communication? If I talk about that factors that determine communication, it's called as uh, the physical environment, the context, and also you can say that communication styles. If I talk about that, means when we say that factors that influencing communication or determine communication, so the physical environment, what do we mean by, right? So the physical environment means we can say that sender, right? So and the context is called as a message, and communication styles with whom you are making a communication. Let's say that if I talk about the sender, so what we find out that means the sender is nothing but the person who starts the message, right? Maybe clear and confident. Let's say that as a teacher, I'm explaining this particular topic, right? So in that case, what it needs actually, it needs clear clarity and also such an easy process so that one can understand, right? The second one is called as a who. Second one is known as a receiver. So, and in that second one, receiver, the person who receives and interprets the message. So, sender is someone who is sending the information with the clarity, and receiver is the person who receives and understands the message, needs to pay attention, right? The receiver needs to pay attention and understand. Example like you are the students who are listening to the means a teacher who gives the idea about these factors influencing communication. So in that case, sender and the receiver both are means both have the means equal importance when they are making a communication, and one is listening to it. Then the second one is called as a what? Channel. Channel. Now, when I say that channel, I can point out that channel refer to what? The medium or the way through which the message travels. Let's say that you can say, when I communicate to you, um, means face-to-face communication can be spoken words over the phone or email. I can also make through letters, social media, isn't it? These are called as channels, right? Let's say that I want to share the uh, means some of the possible question over the WhatsApp message. So that's again called as you uses internet as a channel, isn't it? So in that case, you can point out sender, receiver, and the channel, the medium or way through which the message travels. Then, beside this sender, receiver, channel, you also have another one that's called as a code. Right. Now, what is that code? Code is indicating as the language, the symbol or signs used to express the message. Language, symbols, or sign that used to convey the message or express the message. Like uh, one must be understood by both sender and receiver, isn't it? So in that case, let's say that the example is called as English is a language. So in that case, code is called as English. Hindi can be a language, or Hindi is a language. So, or you can talk about sign language, or you can say that traffic symbols. So these are nothing but examples of code. Beside means this sender, receiver, channel, code, we have another one that's called as a uh, topic, right? What topic one means one actually discuss, like the content of communication, what is being shared, right? So, and whatever will be shared, that should be said in a clear and relevant manner. Example like what you went to a doctor and the doctor explaining medicine doses to a patient. So here you would find out the topic is nothing but how to take the medicines in a means a particular time in a day, isn't it? Or before the food or after the food. That's again called as a topic. Sender, receiver, code, sender, receiver, channel, code, and topic. Beside this, we have another one that's called as a content. So when we talk about content, we find out that the situation or background, right, in which the communication happens, right? The situation or background in which communication happens. Let's say that means you talk about time, place, social, and cultural setting, isn't it? What are they? That's called as a time, place, social, social and cultural, social and cultural setting, isn't it? Cultural setting. Example like let's talk about a formal meeting in office versus casual talk with friends. So what do we find out that? We find out the situation or the background, right, in which communication happens. So a formal meeting in office is something like a what, you know, it's called as a very formal, isn't it? But at the same time, casual talk with friends, it is nothing but an example of informal. So therefore, context also matters the most. Beside this, we have another one that's called as a feedback. Feedback, right? When we talk about feedback, it means I'm talking about the response of the receiver to the sender, right? So it shows that if the message was understood or not, right? So, example like you talk about students nodding, it is the sign of what? Feedback, that students understand something or students don't understand something, right? So, students nodding, students asking questions. So, students asking question is also another way of understanding the feedback or answering teacher, right? When teacher asks questions and students answer the question. So that's again known as a feedback. Beside feedback, we also find out the barriers, right? So barriers that students generally face or called as means in communication, we generally find out the hindrance or called as obstacles that can be anything, right? When you talk about barriers, we can find out the means m- uh, problems or means of challenges that block communication, problems or challenges that block communication or cause misinterpretation or misunderstanding. Let's talk about that. What kind of a barriers we generally face? We can say that we face physical barrier, right? Physical barrier, like you can talk about noise. You can also say that poor internet, poor internet poor internet connection, isn't it? So even you also find out barriers that can be referred to language barrier, isn't it? Language barrier, like using difficult words or jargon that creates a hindrance among the students that they don't understand. That's again called as a language. Even we also have a kind of a psychology, right? So when you talk about psychology or psychological, where we talk about stress, or you can say that a lack of attention, so these are known as a psychological barrier, right? Even cultural, you can say that different gestures or customs that can be known as the example of cultural, right? Cultural barriers. So in that case, barriers can be called as a physical barrier, language barrier, psychological barrier, and cultural barrier. Let's say that a, a bad phone call, all right, or a bad phone signal that makes it difficult to others hear clarity. So in that case, it is also known as a one of the means one of the region of pointing, means um, how different factors influencing communication, isn't it? So, coming in short, if I talk about that, communication is important because it helps people connect, share ideas, and you can say that work together. It depends on many factors. Like you can find out sender, receiver, channel, code, then after topic, context, feedback, and means you can say that what different barriers. So if these are managed well, communication becomes what effective, right? So that's what you can find out. Well, moving to the next one, yes, we talk about sender. Uh, we also talk about what message, channel, receiver, and feedback, isn't it? So this is nothing but called as a uh, kind of a kind of a flow that you would find out. So let's say that if you talk about sender, it means I'm I'm talking about sender. Then after message, message. Then after you can talk about channel, channel. Then after you can talk about receiver, receiver. Then you would find out nothing but the feedback, isn't it? Feedback. So uh, this is nothing but the flow, right? This is the flow. So beside that also we discussed barriers in red like noise, misunderstanding, or poor connection that disturb the channel and reduce effectiveness, right? So this shows that why clear language, proper medium, and active listening that are crucial, isn't it? Okay, so we understood that we have eight key we have yeah we have eight key factors, and those eight key factors are called as sender, receiver, channel, code, topic, context, feedback, and barrier, right? In short, you can, if you want to remember them, you can remember them by re- simply talking about what some real some real some real cool cats, some real cool cats talk clearly Clearly for balance, right? Clearly for balance. Now see that. What is it? You can easily remember some starts with the S, and that's known as a sender. And real R stands for receiver, and C stands for code, right? Then after C stands for channel, C stands for code, and you can talk about T stands for topic, and C stands for context, and you can say that F stands for feedback, and B stands for barriers. Isn't it? Interesting one. Right. This kind of a process is known as a mnemonic process, right? Okay. Yeah. This is something telling about means receiver. We understand that if I talk about um, what we can say, sender as a, if I say sender as a what? Teacher, sender as a teacher, then receiver will be what? Receiver becomes student. Let's say that student. Receiver is students. Then if receiver is students, then we can say that channel. Channel is what? A channel can be called as a spoken words. Channel is called as a spoken words. Spoken words. It means we are telling that voice. Isn't it? If, then after beside channel, you also find out the next one, which is called as a code. What code would be? Yeah. Code can be called as a means the language that you are using, which is called as a, whether it's a English language, or you can talk about Hindi language or signs and symbols, right? That can be called as a code, right? Beside code, we also have another one that called as a topic. So the topic or message, which we can say that the lesson taught, that can be called as a topic. Beside this topic, uh, beside this topic, we can talk about context. In context, we generally say that audio message and purpose. So context, like I said, formal classroom setting, isn't it? And the next one, you would find out feedback. Generally, feedback, but that comes out from what? Sender to means sender to encoding to message, message to channel, channel to receiver, and receiver to decoding and get the feedback. Like in that case, feedback is indicating nothing but a student's question or nodding would be feedback, or student's answer also sometimes known as a feedback, right? Then we find out also barriers, which I pointed here. Barriers could be called as a psychological barrier, emotional barrier, right? We also say that a cultural barrier. So barriers could be anything that called as a noise from outside would be one of the example. Difficult language that you are unable to understand. So is also known as a barrier. So your priority is called as a find out different means different things which are telling us that how they become the barrier, isn't it? So the next one, okay, yeah, now you can see that sender, message, channel, and receiver feedback. Then we find out the means barriers in communication. So we have a sender, message, channel, receiver, barriers. So barriers occur when we find out that noise and misunderstanding that creates nothing but the kind of a barrier in understanding, right? Well, some real cool cats talk clearly for balance, which I told you. Now, whenever you think of communication, just to recall this particular line, right, which I pointed, S for sender, R for receiver, C for code, C for channel, C for code, then after T for topics, C for you can talk about what? Mm, yeah, which I said that context, then F for feedback, and B for barriers, isn't it? Okay. Next, it's models of communication. Right. So when you talk about models of communication, we find out that models of communication can refer to linear, then after transactional and interactive, right? Now you please observe this picture and try to understand. Means when we talk about models of communication, this models of communication can be segregated into three parts. One is called as a linear, second is called as a transactional, and the third one is called as interactive. Let's talk about this linear one. So you can see that how the means this diagram is presented. Here you would find out sender means encode, then make a message and send it, and the decode interpreter, right? Channel is called as a form, fax, or you find out all these things, internet even. Then then after it goes from encode to decode, where you got that feedback or message. And if you find out any of the barrier, that barrier could be noise, right? Okay. So let's have a discussion on um, means one of the models of communication is called as a linear model of communication. So when we talk about linear model of communication, so what is that? Um, If I talk about linear model of communication, so I can say that linear model of communication refers to oldest and simplest model. Oldest and simplest. That is the first thing you would find out. Linear model of communication. So what is that? The first one is called the oldest and simplest model. Second is called as means communication is a one way, right? From sender, message, and receiver, isn't it? So sender, message, and receiver. Then you also find out there is no feedback is considered, right? No feedback, linear mode of communication. So which we discuss at the moment. So no feedback is considered. Then you find out that the receiver is a passive, and then you would find out passive receiver, passive receiver. Then you would find out that uh, means linear model of communication often used in what mass communication like you talk about radio, right? TV, and newspaper. Newspaper. Example you can talk about in linear model of communication, a news reader reading the evening news on TV, right? Viewers cannot respond. So the next one is called as a models of communication, and there are three main models. So one is called as a linear, transactional, and interactive. If you talk about that, the diagram which is clearly shown about um, how the sender send the message and the receiver interprets it, and then after you would find out the feedback, then it also talks about the noise, which is the barrier, isn't it? So when we talk about different modes of communication, And here in this models of communication, we find out three main models. And the first one, which is called as a linear models of communication. So this linear models of communication is what? Now that actually indicates the oldest and simplest model, isn't it? Oh, oldest and simplest models. Okay. Yeah. But before we go to that interactive model of communication, let me discuss more about linear model of communication. So, what this linear model of communication? The first thing which I have pointed here, it's called as it is the oldest, and you can say that simplest model, oldest and simplest model, right? Second is called as a, you can say the communication is one way. The communication is one way, right? Um, you can say that from sender, then after the message, then you would find out the receiver, right? So in that case, no feedback is considered. No feedback is considered, right? Even you also find out that the receiver is a passive. The receiver is passive, right? Beside that also, it often used in what? You can say that mass communication, like you can talk about radio, right? Radio, even you can say that TV, or you can say that newspapers, isn't it? These are the things which are coming under linear model of communication. So even you can talk about the example. In this example, you would say a newsreader reading what? Reading the evening newspaper and reading evening news on TV or television, and viewers cannot respond directly, right? So that can be known as a linear mode of models of communication or linear model of communication. Now coming to the next one is called as a interactive model of communication. So when we talk about interactive model of communication, so what that interactive model of communication would be, you can see that the picture. What what do you draw from this particular picture? You can see that what interactive model of communication, which is also called as the what? That called as a convergence model of communication, or convergent, yeah, CONVER, convergence, right? Here you can see that the picture is presented here, which is stated encoding, which is sender or receiver. This is a sample test that you can edit and you can change also. Uh, hmm, yes, this is something called as this is the next one, which is called as this is the next one, which is called as interactive model of communication. So in this interactive model of communication, you can see uh, the picture is presented. Here it is stated about encoding and decoding. So this one is called as a sender or receiver, and the other one is also sender or receiver, and they share the message, right? Or you can say that feedback channel, right? And there is a noise is which is known as a means barrier. You can say that. But before we discuss more about it, let's know that what interactive model of communication would be. Now, if you talk about interactive model of communication, this is also known as a convergence, convergence model, convergence model, right? So even you can say that means in this communication is a two-way, communication is two-way, two-way, but not simultaneously, but not simultaneously, right? That's you would find out in an interactive simultaneous, simultaneously. So another thing is called as a means both sender and receiver exchange roles. Sender and receiver exchange roles, isn't it? Exchange roles, but feedback comes later. Feedback Feedback comes later, isn't it? So, in that case, or you can say that delayed. Context and the noise are included here also, right? Example like you can talk about writing any of the letters or emails you send, the other person replies later. That could be known as an example of interactive model of communication, isn't it? Now, the next one, which you would find out, which is called as a transactional, isn't it? Like we talk about that linear, then after interactive, and the next one is called as a transactional, isn't it? Now, what is this transactional model actually? Now, this is a clear picture or clear diagram that helps us to understand what transactional model of communication is all about. Now, here you would find out a transactional model of communication, which is known as the most modern and realistic model, right? Most modern, most modern and realistic model, realistic realistic model. So in this also you would find out communication is held two-way here and here, two-way and simultaneously, isn't it? Simultaneously. So here you would find out the sender, and you can talk about receiver, send act as the same time, right? Both are nothing but called as an active participant, both are active participant, sorry, participant, right? So even you would find out that social context, then after you can talk about cultural context and the relationship, right? So relationship affect meaning here, isn't it? So feedback is something which is instant, isn't it? So that's what you would find out. This is known as a transactional model of communication, where you would find out that what communication is two-way and simultaneous. Sender receiver act at the same time, both are the active participants, and context, culture, and relationship affect meaning here. And feedback is instant, right? Let's talk about that. Here, the picture shows that what a face-to-face conversation where means uh, one shows the kind of action like means nodding, smiling, or interrupting while the other speaks, right? So therefore, what we can draw here, we find out three of the three of the different model of communication. So if we put a kind of a glance or differences at a glance, so what we can find out, we find out uh, the first one is called as a linear model of communication. Second one is called as a interactive model of communication. Third one is called as a transactional mode of communication. So in linear, we find out one way. Interactive, it is a two-way, and the transactional, it's called as a two-way simultaneously, isn't it? So if you talk about linear, in that you would find out one way means there is no feedback. The example is called as a TV news, radio, and broadcast. So when you talk about interactive, where we find out two-way and feedback is delayed, and that's what is known as email, later, um, email or letters, right? So then the next one is called as a transactional model, model of communication. It is a two-way simultaneously, and the feedback is instant, face-to-face talk, or called as a video call, right? So that's what you would find out here as the means different models of communication, right? Now, let's come to the next one. Yeah. So here we find out the function of communication. So what do we find out that the function of communication? So before we go to the function of communication, so we need to see that uh, models of communication and their quick revision. So what we find out, linear model, the nature is called as a one-way, no feedback process. It is known as a sender, message, receiver. Example, radio, TV news, public speech, right? So that's what it's called as a uh, means a linear mode of communications, isn't it? Then we talk about interactive mode model of communication, nature, two-way, but feedback is delayed process that called as a sender, message, receiver, feedback is later. Includes context, or you can say that, yeah, context plus noise. Example is called as email exchange, letter writing. So that is what you would find out interactive model of communication. Yeah. Then you would find out. So if you talk about that, uh, the comparison of communication models. So what we find out that linear model, interactive model, and transactional model, right, of communication. So in this, the nature is called as a linear model one way. Uh, then after no feedback, then you would find out interactive model where two-way feedback is delayed, and transactional model, which is called as a two-way and simultaneously, right? Then you find out that the role of receiver, if you talk about role of receiver, means the first one, which is called as a linear model, which is um, a passive. Role of receiver is a passive. And then after for the interactive, we find out active, and the means transactional, we find out active, right? Gives feedback instantly. So in the case of feedback, you would find out linear model, no, not included. Then after interactive, which is called as included but not immediate, and for the transactional, you will find out instant feedback, right? So time and factor, you can say that for the linear, it is quick but one-sided. For interactive, you would find out slower, wait for a reply, and for the transactional, you would find out fast ongoing process. Then you would find out context and the noise. In that case, for the linear, we don't consider that, and for interactive, considered, and for transactional, we find out strongly considered. So the strength of the linear models is called as a simple, fast, useful in mass media, right? But for the interactive, you would find out allows for correction and adjustment, isn't it? And for the transactional, you would find out realistic, dynamic, reflects, and in real life. So similar to that, it has also weaknesses. You can say that means for the linear, no feedback, receiver is passive, and for interactive, it is delayed, not truly live. And for transactional, you would find out complex and harder to analyze, isn't it? So we also draw many of the examples like for the linear, we find out TV news, radio, lecture, and for the interactive, email, letter writing, online forms, and for the Transactional, we find out face-to-face talk, video call, or chat, isn't it? So that's what you would find out when you talk about three different models of communication. So we can make it like LIT, lit. Linear is one way, no reply. Interactive, reply comes later. Transactional, reply comes instantly, right? So that is what you would find out. You can also make a short mnemonic process and remember that, right? Okay, so finally, we understand that when we talk about models of communication, we find out communication has been explained through three main models: linear, interactive, and transactional. The linear model is nothing but views by views made by Shannon and Weber. Shannon, S-H-A, N-N-O-N. So Shannon and Weaver, W-A-V-E-R. So as per their views, communication as a one-way process, right? Where the sender transmits a message to the receiver without feedback. It is simple and useful in mass media like TV news or radio, but the receiver is passive, right? So similar to that, the interactive model also adds the element of feedback through, although it is delayed, you can say that what both sender and receiver exchange roles, but not at the same time. Context and noise are also considered, like you can say that example include emails and letter writings. Clear? So for the third one, the transactional model is not most realistic, showing communication as a two-way simultaneous process. Both participants act as a sender and receiver at the same time, and meaning is shaped by context, culture, and relationship. Examples like includes face-to-face communication or conversation and video calls. In short, you can say that communication evolved from linear to interactive and finally to a transactional model, right? Making the list or making the last one or the most complete model, right? So that is what we find out about models of communication, isn't it? Then we will talk about what means the next one. The next one is, yeah. So this is known as a functions of functions of communication. Now, what is that functions of communication? If you talk about that, um, uh, the functions of communication referring to um, again the same sender and receiver, right? If I talk about the models of communication, communication models explain how information flows between people, the three key models which we discussed, right? Uh, but beside that, if you talk about the idea related to the functions of communication, we can say functions of communication. So here in functions of communication, functions. Mhm. So when we talk about functions of communication, what we find out here, we find out communication does not just exchange information. It also shapes what? It also shapes one, you can say that behavior, behavior, right? Then after decisions, and you can say that relationships. The so in that case, the main functions that you would find out here is known as yeah. So they are known as the first one, which is called as informing, right? What is that informing means? Informing means called as knowledge, sharing knowledge, sharing knowledge. you can say that sharing facts, or you can talk about instruction, right? So when you say that what means functions of communication, we talk about that it all shapes behavior, decisions, and relationship. And here the main functions are nothing but the first one, informing, which indicate about sharing knowledge, facts, and instruction. You can say that. So it has the purpose is to give the receiver new information. To give the receiver new information. Let's talk about the example where we can say a teacher explaining a concept, a manager issuing work instructions, a news report, right? These are nothing but called as informing, right? So this could be a called as one of the main functions of communication, right? So that is what the first one. The next one, beside informing, you have another one that's called as a persuasion, right? The next one would be called as a persuasion. Uh, when you talk about persuasion or persuading, it means called as a convincing someone to accept an idea, convincing, convincing, right? It means called as convincing someone to accept an idea, right? Idea, or you can say that belief, or you can talk about action. And here also you have a purpose. The purpose is called as what? Means to influence attitudes or opinions, right? Third, if you talk about that, the example of it is called as an advertisement. So why an advertisement is given? So you can say an advertisement generally persuade or convince people to buy a product, right? A politician's speech. So generally desiring for the what? Votes, isn't it? So that is what you would find out persuasion is all about. So the first one is called as inspiring, the second one is called as a persuasion, and the third one is known as a motivation. So when I say that a motivation or motivating, so it means I'm talking about encouraging, encouraging, encouraging what? Encouraging people to act or perform better. So that is what the motivation job or role of the motivation. So here you would find out means it encourages people to act or perform better. Even the purpose of the motivation is what that called as to to boost morale, inspire, and so we'll go for the next one. That's motivation or motivating, uh, motivating through the process of the communication. So when we talk about motivation, so what we draw from the motive. We'll go for the next one, which is nothing but motivation. Mm. In this, the meaning of motivation is nothing but called as encouraging people to act or perform better, and the purpose the purpose of motivation in communication is called as to um, increase morale, inspire, and create energy. And you can talk about an example um, of motivation. It's called as a coach motivating players before a match, a boss appreciating hard work to increase the productivity among the employees, right? That can be called as a example of motivation. Well, if we look into the next one, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. The next one is indicating about influence, and influence is all about shaping someone's thoughts, decisions, or you can say that behavior, um, which is nothing but called as a more subtle than persuasion. isn't it? And the purpose of influence is to create impact without forcing. A role model influencing youth, uh, or you can say that youth peer pressure influencing choice. So, uh, influence also plays the most important, mm, not even considered as the most important, but at the same time, it creates some kind of an impact among the among the among the people, or called as among the communicator, right? The next one, which is indicating regulation. When we talk about regulation or the idea of regulating, so it means directing, or you can talk about controlling behavior, uh, directing, directing, or you can say that controlling behavior, controlling behavior of a communicator, controlling behavior, how you direct or control behavior among the communicator, now through rules, or you can talk about norms, or you talk about guidelines, isn't it? So the main purpose of regulating is called as to maintain order and discipline, right? Let's say that you must have experienced the kind of a thing, a traffic signal, isn't it? A teacher asking students to keep quiet, or called as policies. So they are generally helping uh, in regulating or in regulation, right? So that's what we can find out um, in the part of regulating. The next one, which is indicating as a integration. Now, what integration is all about? When we talk about in integration, so integration in means called as a building unity, right? That is what the meaning of integration, building unity and harmony, or called as a peace in groups, right? That is what integration indicates. It's called as a unity, of building unity, or you can talk about harmony. Harmony means peace, that in a group, group or groups, right? The purpose of integration is called as a, to create belongingness and cooperation between the communicators, or you can say that between the groups. Let's say that uh, you talk about the example of team meetings, cultural events, cultural events in a college, or you talk about GD, group discussion at workplace, right? These are the example of one's integration. So what integration is all about? Integration is nothing but known as a building unity and harmony in a group, right? The next one is called as the types of communication. So when we talk about types of communication, we uh, understand that communication in an organization usually follows certain directions or patterns, right? So, and if I talk about the different types of communication, so I can say that uh, one is known as a vertical communication. But before we go to the vertical communication, let me point out what I tell you about all those six. Um, you can say that six different types of or features of communication. One is called as um, yeah, informing. Second is persuasion. Third one is motivation. Fourth one is influence. Fifth one is regulating. And sixth one is integrating. So, or integration. In that case, if you want to remember those six features, then you can probably make a kind of a mnemonic, MNEMONIC, sorry, mnemonic process, mnemonic, MEMONIC, mnemonic ways through which you can remember. Like IE is called as informing, persuading, motivating, influencing, regulating, integrating. or integration. So in that case, if I want to remember all these six in a particular means part, then we can form a sentence, and through that sentence we can means use all these words into a particular part, which will help us to remember that, right? Let's say that if I talk about means uh, I play I play means you can say that I play matches. I play matches in Royal Challenges in a IPL. You can say that. This is again called as a kind of a sentence which you created, in which you point out I for informing, P for persuading, I play. I is called as informing, P is called as a persuading. So matches, M stands for motivating, and means um, I play matches in Royal Challenge team, or you can say that I play matches in means Royal Challenge, or called as uh, yeah, you can talk about anything like um, which will make you a little bit easy, right? Fine. Coming to the next one which I pointed. Yeah. So we are going to discuss the next one. The next one is called as a vertical communication. So what vertical communication is all about? If I talk about vertical communication, um, like we understood, communication in an organization usually follows certain directions or patterns. And when we talk about the main types, then we find out that uh, the most important part is called as a vertical communication. And you can see the picture, and the picture indicates about what how the vertical communication is, right? So when we talk about vertical communication, we can say that communication up and down, right? Communication up and down in the organizational hierarchy. So that is what vertical communication is all about, in which you would find out the downward. Yeah. So the downward from superior to subordinate, from this is called as a superior, and this is called as a subordinate, right? From superior to subordinate, that is again called as a downward, right? Downward. And when you talk about upward, you can point out this is known as a downward, downward. And if you talk about this is again called as a superior to subordinate, subordinate, superior to subordinate. But if you talk about upward, in upward, you would find out this is from subordinate to superior, right? Subordinate to superior, superior. So, what is the purpose actually? The purpose is nothing but it all refers to instruction, instruction, instructions. Second is called as a reports, reports, and third is called as a feedback, 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 and you would find out the next one, decisions, right? That is, or those of the things are happening. Like in, if you talk about downward, in that case, the manager. So the manager giving tasks to employees. So the manager giving tasks to the employees. This could be called as an example of downward. But when you talk about upward, we can say that employees sending what progress report to boss, right? That could be called as a uh, yeah, that could be called as a nothing but an example of means a vertical communication. Now, if I go to the next one could be indicating as a horizontal communication. So, in horizontal communication, what we find out? We find out it is the kind of a communication that held between people at the same level, right? So in the hierarchy manner, right? Uh, so or in the hierarchy section. So in that case, if you talk about two departments, two department heads, so this is called as a operation department and this is called as a marketing department. So in that case, between their communication, coordination, or means sharing ideas could be known as a horizontal communication. So in that case, communication between people at the same level is known as a horizontal communication. So, and what kind of a purpose they do have? They do have the called as a coordination. Then you can also say that teamwork, and you can say that sharing ideas, right? So, like I pointed, the examples are called as a two department heads planning together, classmates working on a group project could be example of it, right? The next one, which you would find out, is known as a diagonal communication. So when you say that diagonal communication, it means communication across different levels and the department. Like you find out the means a kind of a mark here, and it's indicating that what that how the communication held across different levels and departments, not straightly up down or sideways, right? Not strictly up or called as a sideways. So we find out that up and down both are indicating as a what you can say that you can talk about horizontal, then you find out mm, yes. So vertical communication, horizontal communication, right? So when we talk about vertical communication, we understand that vertical communication occurred um, up up to down, up to down, and down to up. That is known as a vertical communication. Or when you talk about horizontal communication, that occurs means between the two different departments, right? They share ideas. They talk about means um, their own ideas, right? But in the case of diagonal, we understand that diagonal communication, it is clearly communication across different levels and department, not strictly up or down or called as a sideways. So in a diagonal communication, we generally find out that um, the purpose is speed up the works or speed up work or avoid delays, solve problems directly. So like we find out an HR manager directly contacting a sales executive, skipping the sales manager, isn't it? So that could be an example of diagonal communication. So the next one is called as a grapevine communication. So when we say that grapevine communication, so grapevine communication indicates nothing but informal, right? Informal, unofficial, like you can find out that informal, unofficial, unofficial communication network in organization, right? So the nature is to generally find out fast spreads like grapevine, zigzag, uncontrolled. See that how you would find out the different kind of means communication here, right? Like you can point out the single stand, gossip, among different people, and probability or possibility, and you can also talk about cluster, isn't it? Cluster. So this could be an example of grapevine communication. Okay, so coming to the next one. So we understood that what is grapevine communication. So grapevine communication is informal, and generally we find out not only informal, you can also say that unofficial communication network in an organization, and the nature is generally we find out fast spreads like grapevine, or called a zigzag, or called a uncontrolled, right? So like you can see that here how it is given about the single strand and gossip, probability, and cluster, right? So the purpose is nothing but you must have seen that in an organization, generally when it is a grapevine communication, it means where there is a possibility of rumors, right, or personal talk, or you can say that news, unofficial unofficial news. Examples like you talk about office gossip, or corridor talk, or WhatsApp group chats, right? Generally, it finds out the in the case of grapevine communication. So, all total, if you talk about grapevine communication, this leads to means um, this is again called as unofficial one, right? Um, well, yeah. So before we move to this this particular mnemonic process, so this is known as a mnemonic. If you want to, remember, wait a minute, sorry, yeah. If you want to remember the whole thing, then you can talk about vary. V is called as a vertical. Then after you vertical is called as a upward, then downward, upward, downward. We can say that this, it goes to the upward, it goes to the downward, right? Then we find out the next one, which is called as a hot. V for very, which is indicating about vertical, right? Then the second one is called as a hot. It stands for horizontal, horizontal, horizontal. This could be indicating as a between equals, right? And the third one is called as a delicious. D stands for diagonal, diagonal. So in that case, if I talk about diagonal, that across labels, or you can say that departments. Then you would find out very hot, delicious grapes. So in that case, the last one is called as uh, G, which stands for grapevine, and it is known as a what? Informal network. Informal network. isn't it? So there are four different kinds of means communication that occur in the means offices or organizations, right? Now let's move to the next one. So you can easily remember that very hot, delicious grapevine, which is known as a vertical, horizontal, diagonal, and grapevine. Right. Uh, Now, look at that. The next one, which is stated about verbal and non-verbal communication, right? Lateral communication in different cultures. So when we talk about verbal and non-verbal communication, lateral communication in different cultures, so the first thought comes to the mind, it's called as a verbal communication. So what is that verbal communication? So communication using and words and language, language like spoken or written, written could be called as a verbal. So the feature is generally clear, clear, direct, easy, easy to record. You can say that, and the forms are called as you can say um, oral, oral like you can talk about speeches, conversations, then after meetings, isn't it? So, whereas written is what? Written, if you talk about that, written letters are generally written, which I have already pointed, letters, reports, or you can say that emails, right? These are the examples which are clearly indicating what is the job of the verbal communication, right? Like you can see here, it is clearly indicating be clear, consider your audience, use nonverbal communication. So while you are doing the verbal communication, so make a nonverbal communication also. Then after you need to take breathe, right? All such kind of a things can be implemented in a verbal communication. So if I talk about verbal communication, it is a kind of a communication using words and language, spoken or written. It is clear, concise, direct, easy to record, and the forms are nothing but called as a oral. uh, or in oral we talk about speeches, conversations, meetings, and if I talk about the next one, which is called as a written, in written we talk about letters, letters, reports, reports, and emails, right? These are the things. So the example of verbal communication can be indicating as a teacher explaining a lesson, an email to a colleague. So all such kind of things can be known as means examples of verbal communication. Coming to the next one is called as a nonverbal communication. So you can see that the examples of nonverbal communication, proxemics, facial expression, paralinguistic, body language, all such kind of a things can be called as an example of nonverbal communication. So if I talk about nonverbal communication, what that? Now communication without words, right? Communication without words could be called as a nonverbal communication. So here we find out mm, without words, without words. Let's say that you can talk about body language, isn't it? So here you can see that body language. Even you also talk about expressions, facial expressions, right? Body language, then after facial expressions, then you talk about that what the kind of a tone, right? And the gestures, isn't it? These are known as a non-verbal communications. So the features you would find out in a the features you find out in a non-verbal communication is called as a unconscious. even powerful supports or contradicts. So supports or contradicts, like let's say that you put a thumbs up, or you means down the thumbs up, so those are nothing but called as a non-verbal communication example, right? So contradicting verbal communication also, like somebody is just speaking, you say that what, no, that is not um, appropriate, or that is not up to the mark, so that can be called as a kind of a non-verbal communication against the verbal communication, right? So if I talk about means different types of non-verbal communication, so I can say that the first one is kind six, uh, kinesics, you can say that. Kinesics is generally known as a body movement and gesture. And the second one, which you can say that facial expression, like smile, like frown, smile or frown or anger, right? Or grim, serious, isn't it? That can be identified through your facial expression. Then, similar to that, we have also proxemics. So, proxemics is called as a use of space and distance, use of space and distance, that called as a proxemics. Then you would also find out paralinguistics. So paralinguistic is indicating about tone. Um, you can say also pitch. So then after you can also say that speed of voice. That can be called as a paralinguistic or paralanguage. Then another one is called as appearance. You can talk about appearance that matter the most, which is known as a dress, then grooming, right? So all totally you can talk about that. There are five different types of non-verbal communication. One is called as kinesics, facial expression, proxemics, paralanguage, or you talk about appearance, right? So all such kind of things are no, coming under non-verbal communication. So you can say that an example of it is uh, a smile. Let's talk about that, a smile. So, a smile showing friendliness, crossed arms, right? Showing resistance, or called as a tone of voice that shows anger, right? So, all such kind of things can be known as the example of nonverbal communication, isn't it? So, if you want to remember them, then you can also follow any kind of mnemonic process, right? So, we cannot communicate. Even silence is also communication, right? We cannot say that what we cannot not communicate, right? It means you cannot your any kind of a means presence, right? Any kind of appearance, whether it is a verbal or non-verbal, shows communication. Like I told you, even silence is also communication. Coming to the next one, that called as a lateral communication and different culture. Lateral communication in different cultures. So when we talk about lateral, what do you mean by that? So lateral equal to communication, right? Lateral equal to communication. So communication, what? Lateral means communication between peers or colleagues at the same level. So lateral equal to communication between peers or colleagues at the same level. So that is what the meaning called as a lateral communication in different culture. So the purpose of lateral communication in different culture is what? It is again called as a coordination. Coordination. You can also talk about teamwork. Even you talk about mutual support, right? Mutual support. And if I talk about the next one, that's called as a different cultures. So what I can find out here, and different cultures means I'm talking about, um, excuse me, it means I'm talking about cultural differences, right? Cultural differences, whether you are talking different cultures, which is indicating that cultural differences, it may be called as a individual culture, individual cultures. Example like USA or Western Europe. Western Europe is nothing but an example. Like they do have a means more direct, open, task oriented or task focused, right? And second is called as a collect share ideas freely, challenges each other, or means let's say that is what again indicating about cultural differences. So you talk about cultural differences generally coming with the individualistic culture, or you can say that collectivist cultures, right? So in individualistic culture, you would find out USA, Western Europe, which is a more direct, open, task-oriented, collection ideas freely, and challenges each other. Right. Let's talk about the example. It's called the two American managers. Two American managers openly debating a project. Right. But in the case of collectivist or yeah, called as a collectivistic cultures. Collectivistic culture means what? That indicates to India, Japan, or called as a China. Like they do have a more indirect, more indirect, polite, polite, and relationship focused. Relationship, relationship focused, isn't it? And generally colleagues avoid open colleagues avoid open disagreement to maintain harmony. And let's talk about that the example in Japan, or you talk about in India. So peers may use silence or hints instead of saying no directly, right? So in that case, if you talk about lateral communication in different cultures, we find out individual culture and collectivistic cultures, and both have a different impact also, right? So style of lateral communication in different cultures varies. Directness, formality, body language, and the tone depend on cultures, right? That's all. Thank you. Well, let's move to the next one. The next one is called as a written communication. So what this written communication means here, using of symbols, letters, words, or numbers can be found out as a means example of written communication. So in this, we find out a couple of things that called as a forms. So the forms of written communication can be referred as a what? Letters, letters, or you can talk about emails, or you can say that reports, reports, or you can refer to the memos. So, and notices. So these are the um, forms of written communication. Beside that, also we have another one that's called as what are the advantages that we generally find out in the written communication? So advantages, disadvantages, limitations. So all such kind of a things that we need to see when we go for the written communication. So the advantages in written communication can be called as a think of it could be a permanent record, isn't it? When you write something, it would be used in the future, right? So therefore, it can be known as a permanent records. The advantage is called as a permanent record or records. Second is called as a, it is clear understanding. It gives the clear understanding as well as it, what you can say that it could be written in a formal style formal style or informal style also. And beside that, we also find out it can reach to the means so many people or called as numerous people. So in that case, we can also consider it is a the advantage is called as a wide reach, right? Beside the meaning of written communication, the forms of written communication, advantages of written communication, we have also find out the limitations. So, what are the limitations that we generally find out in written communication? So, if you see that, means the limitation is called as a slow feedback. What is that? That called as a slow feedback, right? That is one of the thing, and another thing is called as a it may be misunderstood or misinterpretation, misunderstood, or we can say that misinterpretation, right? Without even you don't find out any kind of a tone or expressions in oral communication. You find out that the expression, tone, and you can identify that. But in written communication, you don't find out those of the things, right? A tone and a tone or expression, isn't it? Let's say that if I talk about one of the example, we can say that a company circular or an official email could be an example of what that called as a written communication, isn't it? Okay, so fine. Next is called as a oral communication skills. So when we talk about oral communication skills, we already got some idea that how oral communication matters the most. And what do we mean by oral communication? It can call as a spoken words that are known as the uh, oral communication, you can say that. And they do have oral communication skills do have also some forms, some advantages, some limitations, isn't it? Um, like if you talk about the forms, what we find out face-to-face talks, right? Even you can also talk about the meetings that are organized in the institute or maybe called as a in an organization, right? So face-to-face talks, meetings, even you can also talk about that the call you made make phone calls, right? And even you can talk about speeches. So these are the forms of those spoken words or oral communication. Beside that, also we can talk about advantages. The advantages of oral communication is called as it is a direct communication, or you can say that it is fast, right? It is fast. It is personal. Um, and even you can also say that it is immediate. Immediate. What does it do immediate? It provides the immediate feedback, isn't it? Like you find out somebody gives the speech, and out of that you draw means what kind of a error he did and how his way of speaking and what kind of mistakes he did in that speech. Even we talk about that the tone or expressions, so that also can be drawn while you check the oral communication skills, isn't it? So these are the advantages which can be drawn from the oral communication skills. Beside that, we have another one like in written communication, we talk about the limitations. Here also, we find out the limitation is called as a no permanent record, isn't it? Now, when we say that no permanent record, what do we mean by that? It means like somebody speaks something, so latter can be ignored to that or avoid to that. But in written communication, you have that record, but in spoken communication or oral communication skills, no permanent records are kept. And you can also say that means oral communication skills uh, can be can be distorted, can be distorted if not listed carefully. If not, if not listed carefully, not listed carefully, isn't it? So that's what is called as again another limitation, isn't it? So let's take the example that example could be a lecture in class, a business meeting. So in that case, you would find out a lecture in class must be heard carefully, right? And to form a notes. But at the same time, if some kind of a things have been done wrong, so in that case, there were no means a permanent record. to be means kept for the future use, or means future presence. And means you can also talk about mm, in a business meeting also. We need to keep the things, but oral communication, we have all the records. In in written communication, we have all the notes, but in oral communication, we don't have that, right? So therefore, like written communication, oral communication skills are also very important, right? So therefore, these two come under verbal communication skills, isn't it? The next which we talk is body language. When we talk about body language, that comes under what? Nonverbal communication. That comes under nonverbal communication. It means called as a communication that comes through gestures. Gestures, you can also talk about postures, right? Um, Gestures, postures, or you can say that facial expression, or you can talk about the way you speak, which is called as a tone, and eye contact, and also you can talk about the movement. The way you walk also is nothing but indicating about means communication. Even silence is also known as the one of the means process of communications, isn't it? So in that case, we draw the idea that communication through gestures, postures, facial expression, tone, eye contact, and also movement. Right. So, what this body language in nonverbal communication, or what are the roles that uh, body language play in a nonverbal communication? So, if I talk about the role of body language, we can say that body language generally supports. Even you can, excuse me. Even you can also say that repeats, or sometimes you can say uh, it contradicts. Sometimes it contradicts. Contradicts what? Verbal communication. What do you mean by sometimes it contradicts verbal communication? It means what you are saying, your body or your posture or your gesture or your body movement, or called as eye contact, means doesn't match to that. So in that case, we consider that sometimes your body language contradicts the verbal communication. It means your oral communication, isn't it? Let's say that uh, you are saying something, at the same time your facial expression doesn't match to it, right? uh, like because we know that your body language matches. When you are greeting somebody, you are smiling, so that indicates about what that called as a positive signal, isn't it? That shows what? Positive signal, right? So similar to that, when you are crossing your arms, when you are crossing your arms, crossing arms. So that could be again called as a kind of a defensive attitude. Defensive attitude. When you are talking about tone, tone of voice, tone of voice. In that case, that tone of voice that can show the anger in on your face, or anger on your tone, or you can say that enthusiasm, or you can say that happiness. All such kind of a things can be drawn when you are talking about the body language. So, what you are saying, if your body language matches to that, it perfectly makes the audience understand, isn't it? So, therefore, body language plays an important role, and it is means considered as one of the nonverbal communication, right? So next is called as a interpersonal communication. So when we talk about interpersonal communication, I can say that interpersonal communication is a direct communication between what? Between, you can say, two people, right? Example, like you can say this could be a teacher, this could be a student, right? And both are talking to each other, can be called as a interpersonal communication, isn't it? Even we cannot restrict to the two people. We can say that more than two people will be also involved in the interpersonal communication, two or more people, isn't it? So That is what is known as a interpersonal communications. So there are different types of interpersonal communication. One is called as a dyadic. Dyadic. So the meaning of dyadic is called as a two people, right? So that refers to teacher or student. So even you can also talk about group. So the type could be called as a dyadic or group. So group means referring to small group discussion, small group discussion, right? That could be coming under interpersonal communication. And the features that we find out in interpersonal communication could be called as a personal, personal, or we can say that immediate, immediate, and it also allows feedback. So these are the features that we generally find out in interpersonal communication, right? Let's say that you talk about means you are in a group and your friends discussing a plan, right? Or you can talk about in an organization where you are working, your manager counseling an employee, right? That could be known as the example of interpersonal communication. Okay, so coming to the next one could be referred as a, um, excuse me, lateral communication. Now, what lateral communication is all about? So, when we talk about lateral communication, so we can say that lateral communication refers to means two colleagues, right? Two colleagues, two colleagues, sorry two colleagues at the same level in an organization. So, and their purpose is nothing but you can say that coordination, or you can talk about teamwork, teamwork, or you can talk about problem problem solving, right? So these are the things you can say that the purpose, the purpose the purpose of lateral communication, right? Let's say that example, it's called as a two departments, maybe called as a political science, history or economics, or called as a English or Odia department. So English or Odia department heads discussing a joint project. So that can be called as a means an example of lateral communication, right? So then, yeah. So in that case, what we find out here, uh, you find out that a kind of a mnemonic process is given to remember all such kind of 5 points which we have remember, right? The first one is known as a W. So we only bring interest lessons. So what that W stands for? W stands for, you can say, written communication, and O stands for oral communication. And you can also talk about that means B stands for, yeah, B stands for body language, right? And I stands for that called as a interpersonal communication, interpersonal interpersonal, and L stands for lateral, isn't it? Lateral. So these are the five different types of communication which we can remember by saying that we only bring interesting lessons, right? So that is what you would find out in this um, means comparison, right? This comparison like written, oral, body language, interpersonal, and lateral. So when we talk about written, it is indicating about messages in writing that called as a report or email. When we talk about oral, spoken words, speech or meeting, body language, when we talk about body language, it means gestures, posture, expression, tone, so, and that can be founded means in your body language. We can generally say that smile, crossed arms. So they have a different meaning. Even we also find out interpersonal, that's called as a direct person to person. So that's a conversation or counseling. And the next one is called as a lateral, which is indicating about between peers at same level, two managers coordinating, isn't it? Now, so if I talk about that, we can, yeah, this is indicating about styles of communication. But before we go to the styles of communication, let me show you the kind of a flow chart where we find out that we can refer to communication, then we can follow with the what? Uh, Written, then after you can say oral, and then you can refer to the ones, and these two can come under verbal. And the other one is called as a non-verbal communication. And under the non-verbal communication, body language, right? And we also say that body language is indicating to interpersonal. It means a one-to-one small or called as a small group, right? And under that, you would also find out lateral, which is known as a peer-to-peer. Example, colleagues coordinating work, right? All such kind of a things can be considered as the body language, interpersonal, lateral. Right. Similar to that, when you talk about written language, we understood examples like letters, reports, or you talk about emails. And in oral communication, we find out that speeches, meetings, and conversations, isn't it? This could be called as a kind of a small flow chart, which will help you to remember the means complete idea about the verbal and non-verbal communication, isn't it? Okay, coming to the next one. Yeah. So, which is indicating about styles of communication, isn't it? When we talk about styles of communication, so we can say that communications can take, or communication can take different styles or forms depending on what? Depending on tone. So, depending on what? That called as a tone. Depending on tone, you can also depending on purpose, and also relationship, right? Now, if I talk about that four stages of communication styles, one is called as aggressive, like you can talk about win or lose. You can also say that assertive, win-win situation, and passive aggressive, lose-lose. And you also find out the other one, which is known as a passive, which is indicating as a lose or win, isn't it? So in that case, when we talk about styles of communication, yeah, we find out the flowchart which is presented here by stating that formal, semi-formal, and informal, right? In um, in the formal communication, what do we find out? Styles of communication. So under that formal, semi-formal, and informal. So formal is generally referring to official, rule-bound, written. Like I told you, the examples will be office memo and government circular, right? So generally, formal communication is known as a what? Official, structured, and follows what? Follows a set hierarchy. Follows what? A set hierarchy. Hierarchy means gradation. So, and it has also features. If you talk about the features, you can say that means generally formal communication is made means professional manner, right? Or polite in nature, and like I pointed, rule bound, right? And uses official language. And the channels in the formal communication can be referred as a office memo, government circular, or you can say that reports or emails, all such kind of a things. And formal communication do have the advantages. What are the advantages? You can find out it is clear, it is documented properly, documented properly, and it is authoritative, isn't it? Authoritative. So, but at the same time, it has also limitations. So, what are the limitations we find out here? That called as it is very slower, right? It is slower than others, and you also find out rigid, slower, rigid, and you can say that less personal. It is not personal, less personal. Like you could talk about, you are working in a company, a manager issuing instruction to you as well as to the other staff members. So in that case, what he does, now he writes a formal letter, right? Um, and means through that, or he writes a particular um, instruction to all the staff members. Or you can say that means one of the employee who is writing a formal letter to government office. So they all come under formal communication, right? So the second one, which we point out as the means semi-formal communication. So semi-formal communication is what? That mix of both. Mix of both means you are talking about mix of formal and informal. It means mix of formal and informal style. It is generally known as official purpose, but in a friendly tone, right? So it also have the features. When we talk about the features of it, it is generally known as a respectful, right? But not too rigid, but not too rigid, not too rigid, or you can say that often used in academic and workplace context. Similar to that, it has the channels. So the channels generally find out emails with colleagues, teacher-student discussion, and group projects, right? Group chat also. And this could have also advantages and limitations. Advantages like what it balances clarity with comfort, clarity with comfort, and stiffness, stiffness, isn't it? So, what are the limitation the semi-formal have? Limitation. When we say that limitations, we can say the limitations would be it may become means casual, too casual, or you can say that too rigid if not balanced. Too rigid if not balanced. There is a condition. If not balanced, isn't it? So let's talk about a teacher, right? Sending a polite but friendly reminder email to student, or you can say that a team leader motivating peers or motivating the other members in a WhatsApp group. So this could be known as the semi-formal, right? Um, so the next one that we find out is known as a informal, right? When we talk about informal communication, it is purely not formal, or not means informal can be semi-formal, but semi-formal is not restricted only with the informal, right? So informal means what? That called as a casual, personal, friendly, not bound by rules or hierarchy. So ulta of formal, right? Hierarchy. So informal does have also features like you can say it is quick, it is natural. It is you can also say that friendly talks, charts, social media groups, all such kind of things are known as channels. And this informal also carries the advantages. What are the advantages you would find out? You would find out it is fast. It is fast. It is, you can say that it encourages bonding, right? So that's also there. Limitations like you may find out rumors. It can spread rumors, right? Rumors, and it may lack correctness or accuracy. So maybe whatever you find out the information, so that information could be false or called as not 100% correct. So that is the limitation you would find out. You can take the example like friends chatting at lunch, office corridor talk. So those of the things are nothing but known as the means example of informal talks or informal communication. So then, yeah. So we have already discussed what formal communication is there, and you can see that the formal communication that the presentation was outstanding. Thank you. I will share the other details soon. So informal, that is a formal, and this is the informal. So in informal, what do you say? Hello, hi, how was your vacation? So all such kind of things can be considered as the example of means of formal and informal communication, isn't it? So if I say that we have drawn the idea called as a means formal, informal, and semi-formal, right? Formal, informal, and semi-formal, semi-formal communication. So we understood what formal communication. It is known as a official and rule bound, and the examples are called as a circular and memo, official email also. This, and when we talk about informal, yeah, when we talk about informal communication, we can say that it is casual, uh, friendly, and gossip friendly chat, and um, when we go for the semi-formal communication, we can say that it is a mix of formal and informal, isn't it? Like teacher students email, team coordination, they can be example of semi-formal communication, right? Okay. So next is called as a you completely you must have understood completely that the styles of communication, formal, semi-formal, and informal, right or not? Let's move to the next one, which is known as a means oral presentation, right? Now, when we talk about oral presentation, means what is that? Now, oral presentation is generally known as a method. It is a method. Oral presentation is known as a method. Method of what? That called as a communicating ideas, communicating ideas, communicating ideas briefly, briefly, or you can say that verbally in front of an audience in a structured manner, right? So that is what called as oral presentation. So generally oral presentation combines with what that called as a speech, visuals, visuals. Visuals means you can talk about slides or charts, right? So beside you can talk about speech, visuals, you also need to present your body language. So body language also matters the most, right? And what is the purpose of the oral presentation? You can say that the purpose of the oral presentation is nothing but to inform, right? To inform, or you can say that persuade or convince, or you can say that explain. You explain also. You explain a topic. You explain a topic, right? Those of the things are the purpose. Even you can also say that to develop students' confidence, clarity, and public speaking skills. So those are nothing but called as the purpose of means oral presentation. This also carries the main features, key features. So when we say that key features, uh, generally oral presentations are planned and structured, like I have pointed. Planned and structured, delivered to a specific audience. Let's say that if you are giving presentation in college, so your audience would be teacher and students, right? Specific audience, right? But if you are giving presentation in a company, so it means your audience will be um, you can say that your boss, right or not? So this is the key features are planned and structured and also specific to delivered to a specific audience and supported with what? Visual aids. Visual aids like PPT charts, handouts, which I told you. Uh, it also requires what? It requires your confidence level. Your confidence level, even you can also say that to your eye contact, and clear voice and body language, isn't it? These are the things. And when we go for the means next one, that's called the just steps in presentation. So what are the steps that we generally focus when we go for the oral presentation? So what we understood that what oral presentation is, what are the purpose of the oral presentation, what are the key features of the oral presentation. Then we talk about steps in presentation. Generally, when we say that steps in presentation, we need to follow with the planning, organizing, practice, and delivery, right? So these are the steps which one has to follow. The first one is called as a planning. When we say that planning, it means I'm talking about selecting topic that you are going to present, analyze audience. So audience must be understood, and for that, whatever the materials are needed, that you also need to gather, right? So beside planning, we also go for the organize. Let's say that organizing, it means called as a how do you introduce, how do you introduce, what are the main points that you're supposed to follow, main points, and how do you need to conclude it properly, right or not? Conclude. So these are the things you can point out when you talk about organizing: introduction, main points, and conclusion. Mm. Beside organization, we also say that organizing, we also say that practice. So, in that case, let's say that if you want to present something tomorrow or day after tomorrow, so in that case, you need to plan from today onwards. You need to organize everything today onwards. And what you are going to speak, so you need to follow that or rehearse that. Rehearse with what? Timing, because you will not get all the time, right? Rehearse with 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 2 hours. So, and you also practice, understand that what are the visual aids which are necessary. Then the next one, which is called as a delivery, right? It means when you are presenting, you need to speak clearly, use gestures, and handle questions, isn't it? These are nothing but the steps in presentation, oral presentation. Similar to that, this has the advantages. What are the advantages of oral presentation? If I talk about advantages, so I can say that it improves communications, it improves communication and confidence, communication and confidence, right? Second is called as it it encourages active participation, participation. Even it makes theory classes more engaging, isn't it? Uh, if I talk about example, we can say that um, in English department, a teacher is teaching literature, and in that literature class, a student may a means give 5 minute oral presentation means on any of the topic that may be called as the themes in Shakespeare, Shakespeare's Macbeth, or may be called as in a SEC class. You would find out a teacher has given a task to a student to means. um, give a kind of a presentation on business communication, or called as about verbal or non-verbal communications, right? Or in means commerce AEC class, means a teacher is giving a task to the commerce students to um, present the brief information how to prepare a resume writing, isn't it? So that can be called as oral presentations, right? So these are the six means you can say that these are the six different ways through which you can means prepare your oral presentation properly, right? So that is what you can say about the oral presentation. uh, So we can draw a kind of a quick revision here, that oral presentation. What is oral presentation? Oral presentation is a way of communicating ideas verbally in front of an audience in a planned and structured manner. It uses speech, visuals, plus body language. We understood about the oral presentation. Now let's move to the women's. So we have understood the oral presentation. So now move to the next part. Uh, yeah. So you can see that whatever we have discussed so far means it has provided that. So it tells about the definition of whom, definition of what, definition of oral presentation. So you can see it is written that oral presentation is a method of communicating ideas verbally in front of an audience in you can say that in a planned and structured manner, right? So we also find out that means it combines speech, visuals like slides, charts, and also you can say body language. So these are the things which are representing nothing but the oral presentation, right? Now, um, and we find out that the purpose, what is the purpose of oral presentation? When we talk about the purpose of oral presentation, we understood that means the purpose of the oral presentation is what? To inform, to inform. Um, to inform means what? That called as just sharing knowledge, sharing, sharing knowledge, sharing knowledge, isn't it? Similar to that means we also find out the another purpose is called as to persuade, to persuade, to persuade. It means you need to influence your opinions. You need to influence your opinions uh, upon whom? Influence your opinions upon the audience, right? Then the third one is known as a means to explain, or you can talk about clarify, explain or clarify. So explain or clarify what? Now your ideas, right? And so that means audience can understand what you want to convey. Got my point? So, beside that, also, we can find out the purpose is also to enhance your confidence level or build uh, confidence level uh, means of yours, as well as means create the kind of a confidence among the readers that they start believing you, right? By providing the clarity and public speaking skills, public speaking skills, isn't it? So these are nothing but called as a purpose. Now, beside purpose, we also know that we have read that called as the key features of oral presentation. When we talk about key features of the oral presentation, we understand that the key features of the oral presentation are nothing but your oral presentation must be planned and structured, right? You need to understand whom you are going to deliver your presentation. Um, so, delivered to a specific audience, delivered to a specific audience. Even you can also say that means you must have the visual aids, or you can say that visual aids means referring to the PPTs, handouts, or charts, diagrams. Even you also need uh, to have the features like confidence of yours, and you can also say that eye contact. Even you can also say that good body movement or good body language. These are the key features which are necessary when we are talking about what oral presentation. Beside these key features, we have another one that called as we can say means the steps in presentation. So when you prepared with all such kind of a things, you need to follow with the steps in preparation, like we talk about planning, right? So like you need to select the topic, you know your audience, you gather your material. So that is coming under planning. Even we also talk about organizing. It means how you give your introduction, means what kind of main points you are means pointing in your topic, and how you justify your topic is apt, right? And what would be the means final conclusion, right? That could be called as a organizing. Beside organizing, you also need to practice, right? Practice is something which is very important, because if you have not practiced yourself, you have not rehearsed with the visuals and timing, you may means disrupt your oral presentation, or you may means um, you may find out confusion or chaos, or you may unable to answer the questions from the audience, right? So, or you can say that the delivery you make, which will be not apt, right? Because delivery needs what? That called as you need to speak clearly, use gestures, right? And handle questions, right? Handle questions. So these are the steps that one needs to understand while he is giving oral presentation, right? So obviously, if you give the oral presentation, or if you are means doing such kind of activity, then it does what? It improves. It has some of the advantages, you can say. Like you can say that it improves your communication, the communication level, and also you can say the confidence, right? Confidence. Second is called as it encourages participation, right? Encourages encourages participation, participation. So even it makes theory classes engaging, more engaging and interactive. Like I said before, right? That interactive. Like you can say that a student in a literature class gives a 5 minute oral presentation on a particular topic that may be called as a themes in Shakespeare's Macbeth, right? Or may be called as a talking about how to prepare a resume, isn't it? So in that case, we find out the advantages here. What are the things that you need to follow, and what you shall not uh, you shall not do when you are talking about um, oral presentation. It's called as a do's. Means again, let me point out plan and organize content. Second is called as a practice and manage time. Third is called as a maintain eye contact. Fourth is called as a use visual effectively. Whatever you use, right? Second is called as a use visual means effectively, or you can talk about speak clearly and confidently, whatever you are presenting. right? And when we talk about don't, it means called as you shall not read word for word from slides or called as a paper, right? So that you shall avoid. Second is called as you don't speak too fast, or you can say that too slow, that audience find problem, right? Then third is called as you do not ignore the audience, right? If any of the audience asks question, try to answer the question, right? You shall not ignore, right? It means you need to have a proper eye contact, right? Do not overload slides with the text, right? Because that looks messy and also make the reader find out difficult. So, and the last one is called as do not use filler words like you can say like that. So you shall avoid such kind of things, right? Then only you would find out your overall presentation will be uh, the best, right? So these are the things that you need to keep in your mind while you are following with the oral presentation. Now, let's come to the um, most important part, which is called as a question and answer. As we have finished the unit one of um, means unit one of that SEC course, then we need to go for the possible questions and their answer, right? Um, Let me go for the questions and try to answer these questions answer. uh, Let me tell you, we have a two session or two parts. You can say the first part is a short answer or short notes, right, or comprehension based, and generally we can expect that each question will be 5 marks, right, and the answer should be in a 2 to 3 sentences. No need to write means huge or excessive, which will means which will be considered irrelevant, isn't it? So that's what you need to keep in your mind. Let's move to the first question. First question of short answer. So the first question is stated about define communication in simple terms. So when we talk about uh, means communication in simple terms, what do we find out? That what is communication? So communication is the process of sharing ideas, right or not? Not only ideas, but also thoughts or information between a sender and a receiver to create understanding. That is what known as communication, right? So you here also you can give example, like you can say that means how a teacher explains a lesson to a student in the class, right? So and the students able to the student able to able to grasp what the teacher says and also answer the question means after explaining explanation, isn't it? So that could be known as a means the definition of the communication as well as an example. I hope you understood this. Now, moving to the next question. The next question is called as a, what is the role of feedback in the communication process? So, what is the role of feedback in the communication process? What do you mean by feedback? Now, if I talk about that feedback, that actually means you can say uh, we draw once the conversation completed, right? We find out that what the teacher teaches, whether the student understands it or not, right or not. So feedback shows whether the student or the receiver has understood the message correctly, right? And it completes the cycle of what communication. It completes the cycle of communication and helps the sender improve or clarify. It means that helps the sender or the person who initiate the communication understand that how did he make the communication, means how did he mm, share the information that others understand or not understand and what the problem behind it. Example, like you can find out student asking questions after a lecture, right or not. So that could be referred as a whatever you taught means the student understand, but find out some kind of doubts in some parts which they want to clarify. So that could be known as a kind of a feedback, right, in the communication process. Then we find out the third question. So third question is called as a write a short note on grapevine communication. Now, if I talk about the grapevine communication, we understood that grapevine communication is an informal, unofficial, and casual flow of information, right? Where in an organization. So it spreads quickly, often like gossip or rumors, fake news, right? So it has also inaccuracy, but also it builds nothing but what? Social bonds, right? That could be called as a means grapevine communication. Like I gave an example here that's called as a employees discussing upcoming promotion during lunch. So um, maybe it's something like an imaginary one, but it doesn't have any kind of accuracy or called as a means authenticity, right? So this could be a kind of a rumor that someone will definitely get the promotion, or someone is going to get the promotion, right? Um, or he did the kind of means he did the negligence in the official time in office. So this could be a rumor, this could be a fake, but that spreads quickly among the employees. So it is nothing but an example of grapevine communication. Simultaneously, when we go for the question number 4, what does it say? Mention two advantages. Mention two advantages of oral presentation in a classroom. Obviously, when we talk about two advantages of oral presentation in a classroom, I can say that um, uh, it improves oral presentation can improve what that called as confidence, confidence, and speaking ability or speaking skills of students, speaking skills of students, isn't it? This is the first one. Second one, you can say that they make classes what? More interactive, interactive and engaging compared to lectures. Engaging compared to lectures. So you can take it that means these are the 2 points which will help you to understand that there are many advantages, but if you have been asked only two advantages, you can go for it, right? Then the last question, which is stated here as a question number 5, which is stated differentiate between formal and informal communication with one example. Now, this one is called as a formal and informal communication, and we need to find out the differentiation as well as example. So when we talk about formal communication, we understand formal communication as known as official, uh, structured, planned and structured, and it follows rules, right or not? Let's say that example, you can say a circular from the principal to all the students would be known as a formal. At the same time, when we talk about informal communication, it is not official, it is casual, it is friendly, and it is, you can say that personal, right? Personal. Let's say that the example would be called as means some of your friends chatting about homework after class, right? So this could be known as an informal communication, isn't it? So these are the five short answer, or you can say short notes, um, which could fetch 5 mark of each. So you can write more than that, but I have just provided means the specific answer to this question, right? Let's move to the part B. Yeah, part B. So part B questions are a little bit you find out. um, given with the 5 marks of it. Um, yeah, you can also explain it in a lengthy part, or you can say that in a long passes. If it carries 10 mark of each, right? So let's go to the each question and try to understand what each question is asking us. So the first one, it is stated 4 to 6 sentences, but you can write more than that if it carries means 10 marks. Let's say that the first question, explain how cultural differences affect non-verbal communication, right? Non-verbal communication with suitable examples, right? It means we need to explain as well as we need to give the examples, right? The first thing is called as it is asking about cultural differences affect non-verbal communication. Okay, so please to understand that non-verbal communication, which is generally pointing gestures, body language, eye contact, right? So nonverbal communication often carries what different meaning in different cultures, right? For example, you can talk about maintaining eye contact, right? Maintaining eye contact is seen as confidence in Western cultures, but um, you can also say that, but can be considered disrespectful in some means Asian cultures, right? Similarly, means you talk about thumbs up, a thumbs up, right? Which is the sign means approval in most countries, but it is often seen in parts of the where you can talk about Middle East, Middle East, isn't it? List. So in that case, means we can consider that cultural awareness is essential to, avoid misinterpretation. Avoid what? That called as a misinterpretation, isn't it? Interpretation. So that could be the first question answer you can go for. Now, let's move to the next question. Question number two. What does question number two try to tell us? So it asks us compare linear, interactive, and transactional models of communication. Which one do you think is more practical today and why? Right. So we need to, this could be a kind of a 10-mark question, right? So compare linear, interactive, and transactional models of communication. Which one do you think is more practical today and why? So when we compare linear, interactive, and transactional model, so the first thing is called is we need to know those of the models, right? The when we talk about linear models, think of it. When we talk about linear model, so what is that linear model? That called as a one way. First thing is one way, how sender, then after message, then after receiver, and you find out no feedback, right? No feedback, no feedback. That is the linear one, right? When you talk about interactive, interactive, so in that case, what do we find out? Interactive models are two-way, two-way, right? That's something called as it includes feedback, 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 but in turns, but in turns, right? Now, if you talk about the third one, which is called as a transactional model, then we can find out that transactional model is called as a both sender 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 and receiver, right? They exchange messages simultaneously in real time. So that could be called as a linear, interactive, and transactional. So linear is a one way, no feedback, message sender, message receiver, no feedback. Interactive model is called as a two way, means includes feedback, but in turns, then you would find out transactional models. Transactional model is called as a both sender and receiver. Both sender and receiver exchange messages simultaneously in real time. So in that case, we can point out today this transactional model is most practical. Why? Because modern communication like video calls, social media, classroom discussion is nothing but called as a continuous, dynamic, and involves instant feedback, right? That's what we find out, um, linear, interactive, and transactional models of communication means why, and you can talk about that. Um, which one do you think? Why means which one do you think is more practical today, and why? Right. Then we move to the next question. The next question is called as a barriers. Barriers in communication can Barriers in communication can distort meaning, right? Analyze with example, right? Let's say that if I talk about barriers, what do you mean by barriers? The meaning of barriers are known as obstacles, obstacles, obstacles. So when I say that the barriers or obstacles that stop actually clear understanding. Why barriers in communication can distort meaning? Because it doesn't allow the other person to understand something clearly. For example, you would find out means obstacles called as a noise barrier. You also find out language barrier, or you talk about psychological barrier, right or not? So if I talk about noise barrier, you can say that external noise, like you are teaching to students, but at the same time the fan makes the creaking sounds. So that could be called as a external noise during your teaching, right? Or you can say that phone call makes the message means unclear. You find out external noise. Because of that external noise, you make the phone calls and that phone call makes the message unclear, right? That can be an example of noise. Similar to that, when you talk about language barrier, it means using very difficult technical jargon with a non-expert audience, means audience who cannot understand. So that would be called as a language barrier. Third is called as a psychological barrier. It means it refers to a student too nervous to ask questions, means uh, means for for feeling insulting or called as some kind of a criticism, isn't it? So that could be a psychological, isn't it? So or maybe called as a means he doesn't understand the uh, lecture, right? And that means he finds a kind of an introvert in nature and cannot ask questions. Therefore, if you talk about barriers, barriers generally um, distort meaning and can cause, you can say that confusion, conflict, or you can say that wrong decisions, isn't it? So that is what you would find out the third question answer. Fourth, fourth says that how does lateral communication contribute to teamwork in organization? Now, if I say that lateral communication, it means lateral communication occurs between whom? Colleagues at the same level, right? Lateral communication occurs means between the colleagues at the same level. So colleagues uh, means between the same level. It helps in what coordination, problem solving, and also sharing ideas without waiting for what? Without waiting for top-down orders. For example, you can say that two teachers planning a joint project or two teachers planning to do the means a farewell ceremony, uh, right or not? Or you can say two students or two engineers collaborating on a design. So it builds what? It builds nothing but the teamwork, isn't it? You can also say that um, uh, it improves efficiency. It and also uh, it reduces delays in decision making, right? So therefore, you can find out lateral communication, though it's you can say that kind of a communication which is happening between uh, between colleagues at the same level, but it also indicating that what teamwork improves efficiency and reduces delays in decision making. Then we have the last question, which is called as critically evaluate the role of oral presentations in enhancing learning in theory-based classes. Now, if I talk about that, critically evaluate the role of oral presentation, I could say that um, oral presentation means encourages active learning by making students explain concept in their own words. Even you would find out these students improve public speaking, confidence, and clarity of thoughts, right? So for them, presentations also make theory subjects more interactive and participatory for the teacher, right? Um, Means it doesn't allow the class to be looked boring, right? So that's what you would find out. It breaks monotonous or monotony. However, it challenges include time constraints, right? Because sometimes you teach and you find out that what the your class supposed to end at 12:30, it continues till 1 o'clock. So in that case, time constraints you won't find out. So nervousness of students also, because one is not able to complete that, and a kind of a fear that subject knowledge is not present, and unequal participation, right? So overally you can say that they are a powerful learning they are a powerful learning tool when combined with what? Combined with the guidance and practice, isn't it? So these are the questions answer of this particular topic. I hope you understood everything clearly. Okay. So how you like the video? Please suggest your views on the comment section, and if you like it, please do like and subscribe the video and share among your friends so that they also get the benefit out of it. That's all. Thank you. Bye bye.